Hello, and welcome back to the Field Coach Experts podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Brannon, Chief Growth Officer at AC Inc. Today, we're talking about business acumen, financial confidence, and what it really looks like to coach franchisees toward profitability. Because numbers are never just numbers. They tell a story about behavior, decisions, habits, confidence, and sometimes avoidance. So to help me unpack this, I am joined by Damian MacInnis. He is a regional business coach with Paul Davis Canada. Really excited to have you here. So welcome, Damian, to the podcast.
Thanks, Jen. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So before we dive into our topic, as normal, I would love for you to introduce yourself, a little bit about your background and with franchising and your role with Paul Davis Canada.
Yeah, for sure. I've had over 20 years of experience with coaching, consulting, and being an entrepreneur. I worked across Canada. Currently, I'm the regional coach for Western and Atlantic Canada for Paul Davis Franchises. And in the past, I worked all the ways up to Nunavut. So, I mean, I can say that I've hit every province and territory across Canada. So
Cool.
it's been quite a journey for sure. But it's when I think back, it's been quite a journey, but also a learning curve for myself. From I was late 20s in sitting across boardroom tables from airline companies up when I was up in Nunavut, working with a logistics company up there, and right to CEO of a Chamber of Commerce. And then I got into the consulting world after owning a couple of businesses. I owned an airline or private airport for a bit, and then property management company. So I kind of have a wide spectrum of experience in business. So through that, I guess, journey, I was able to get a really good understanding of how to read financials and P&Ls and cash flow statements and balance sheets. So it kind of led to where I am today. I started with Paul Davis Canada about 2.5 years ago. It was quite a change for me coming from being an entrepreneur and getting back into the corporate world. That was it took a lot of convincing, I guess you could say. But I'm very pleased. I'm pretty fortunate to be working with Paul Davis. They're a very astute franchise system. They have a grave understanding of the importance of the client and the franchisee. Something that I'm proud of to be working with them because of that, because it's about helping people, and that's what we do in the restoration business, and it's helping the client, but also in my role helping the franchisee to become profitable. And that's what I've done my whole life. I coach numerous sports teams and been involved in the community a lot, and it just kind of fits well with what I believe in. So it's been quite a ride.
Nice. Yeah, we love Paul Davis Canada. They're good friends of our company and brand. And I was telling you earlier, I was sitting on a panel not too long at our Canadian Franchise Association conference with Bill. What's Bill's CEO? Damian?
He's the CEO of Canada. Yeah.
CEO of Canada. Of Canada. Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, good stuff. And I love that. I love everything that you said about your brand, your system, and the people first component of that with franchising. That's what we all believe here. So, okay, let's jump into our topic for the day. As a former franchisee myself, putting money in our pocket, that's what it's all about. And so I love that you, one of the favorite parts of your position is really helping franchisees with their profitability. So when you think about that and your role supporting those franchisees, where do financials fit into the work that you do with the owners? I know you talked about you focus on profitability, but what does that mean?
Well, I think you said it early on. It's about telling that story with financials, right? And really, I think you nailed it right on the head. Because because with financials, you can understand the health of the business. You can understand kind of ebbs and flows, and helps you understand the seasonality of, like, especially the work that we do. It's so seasonal. Like, so it could be during a storm season, it could be like in the slower season. So it's really trying to understand that business and regionality too. Like, we're such a vast country, and me being I actually live in the Atlantic coast, but I also do work in Western Canada. So the amount of weather patterns are so much different, and so no franchise is actually the same. So the system might be very similar, but understanding their financials and basing that on a regional approach is very important. So that's what's different from, I guess, this franchise compared to other franchises, is that like, if you get like a sandwich store, I'm not going to mention anybody, it's pretty common right across the network of franchises, and you put the bread here, it's just a system, right? But with us, it depends on weather, it depends on insurance companies, it depends on carriers, partnerships that we build, that type of thing. So, I mean, really understanding that per business is very important. So that's the biggest adjustment I had to make, for sure, is really trying to, understand the regionality around it, and understanding the business per region, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting, because you're right. That's not super standard in franchising, that real difference. So that's key for you guys. That's interesting. So financials are something that we know franchisees aren't always keen to look at. And I will, and I'm sure I've said this on other podcasts, I'll be the first one to put my hand up. When I started with my first brand, well, I don't know what, 25 years ago or something like that, I was like, oh, those things are things for the bookkeeper to worry about. All I looked at really was my top line revenue. That was about it, which I know is very, very common. So, why, from the role of a coach, why is coaching financial sometimes really, really difficult with your franchisees?
Well, I'll tell you, I feel your pain. I own my own business numerous, and that was my thought process too. I was like, my account will handle that, and until I actually got into like a point where you're like, oh my God, I'm not making money. How do I go make money? And then I had to teach myself, right, and then go take some training and that type of thing, and really understand it. And that's kind of where the passion came from in this role, was to try to not allow companies to get to where I was. So, but it's very common, and it's about that approach, that empathy piece, and really, working with the franchisee to say, for me personally, it's like, hey, I've been through this. I can empathize with you. It's a scary part of everything. Like, if you don't feel comfortable with this, and like, it's really trying to ask them the questions and find the gaps within their own abilities, right? So, and it's just like any sports team. Like, when I coach sports, it's like, where do you find the holes? How are you going to fix them? Or can you find somebody to fit that role, to fill that role, right? And that's the big thing I find with that's the most common thing across the franchise system, for sure, is really trying to find the gaps. Like, not everybody has the same gaps, but there are gaps in every business. So nobody's perfect, and really allowing the franchisee to know that. And like, nobody's perfect. Your business could be a $20 million business. It could be $1 million business. It could be a $500,000 business. There's gaps, and it's up to us to kind of find that, but also asking them the questions to get them there. That's something that I definitely learned through the accelerator course, was always trying to, don't tell them what they did wrong, or don't tell them this, don't tell them that. You base your questions around getting to them to that point, because then they're using their brain to allow themselves to get to that point and be like, okay, how do I fix that? That's what you want to get them to, is say, hey, do you have any advice? And then be like, do you mind some advice? Or like these are the questions you ask, right? And really trying to look at the numbers and some like operational habits, I guess, is
Hmm.
the big thing, and really trying to look at, their just open their eyes a bit. I guess that's the big thing, is
Yeah.
really try to help them, lead them down the path to get to where they have to be. I guess that's
Right.
the word, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I think we're, as franchisees, we're fearful of numbers. It's not something we want to often, kind of really dig into. Sometimes we don't even want to know our spending because if we know our spending, then we might have to do something about to reduce it. And I think we run these business boot camps. We used to call them performance groups, but for franchisees and in brands, and it's for those people that are feeling like I'm running a business, but am I really being a business owner? And quite often they're not doing those things. They're not looking at their numbers. They're not looking at their financials because they don't know how. They're intimidated about a P&L, right? And so we run these specifically for these brands where it's like we'll teach you, and brands can do that internally themselves as well. We'll teach you these business skills, how to read a P&L, how to understand it, how these what do these things mean, and then the coach, once we have that kind of understanding, our job as coaches, right, is to empower the franchisees to use these financials, which is exactly what you've been saying in a different way. So let's talk about that. When you're working with a franchisee, what are you looking for with them with their financials?
Well, there's usually six things that I
Okay.
really look at. It's your top line revenue,
Hmm.
like that's what everybody wants to see. And then you use that as a projection of previous, and where you're going to go based on previous years and what kind of growth you want. And then it's your cost of goods sold, and with that, your gross profit. So
Okay.
then you look at your expenses,
Hmm.
your AR, your AP, and your cash flow.
Hmm. Okay.
Those are the things. That's six or seven. but but either way, those are the things I really focus on, and mainly because I mean those are what kind of judge the you have a high AR and your cash is low, well, go get your money, right?
Hmm.
That's the message. If your AP is high, your AR is your AP is higher than your AR, what's going on there? Like that's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
So we got to find a way to kind of level that out, and maybe that might be on your cost of goods sold and GP side where you're actually spending more than actually making. So you have to kind of, adjust that.
Hmm.
So it's really trying to coach them to understand that, and
Yeah.
a lot of times I find too on the expense side, it depends on how many years you've been in business too. Like if it's a startup, your first 3 years are, it's just a whirlwind. You're just pumping out money, and
Yeah.
it's you have to have that cash flow to be able to manage it, and managing the cash flow. I mean, that's such an important piece, especially in the restoration business,
Hmm.
is because you get some of these larger projects, you get some, a bunch of these little dinky projects, but all of a sudden this, larger project where a house burns down, and you have to finance that for the
Yeah.
first bit, and then
Yeah.
trying to teach them about, you know, getting draws over the certain amount of time, and like sometimes people don't understand that,
Yeah.
and there's so many different aspects to it all, but it's it's about being there for that support, so they can
Mhm.
say, hey, I got this contract, what do I have to do? you know
Yeah.
like that's where you want to get to as a coach. Ideally you
Hmm.
want to have them asking you questions, and and just be a resource for them, rather than wait until they fail. And you don't want that.
Hmm.
You really want them to have that confidence in you to ask those questions. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think, really looking at the financials is we're looking at those KPIs within the financials, right? What are those main ones? And all brands have different ones. Obviously, top line revenue is always one, but different brands will have like labor percentage is a huge one for some brands, and it really depends. Marketing, some of those things, and then I think I know you would agree is we're digging deeper into them, into what's the story, right? That
mm,
these financials are telling us. What's the behavior that's happening? I've had people before, and I've told this story. Forgive me if you've heard it, but I was working with a franchisee once, and she bought all of her team I think both cell phones and iPads. And she had like, I don't know, 15 people on her team. And because she just on a whim, because she never looked at her financials. And then when we dug deeper and I showed her how much money she was spending, then it was the does that justify what the benefit of them each having these iPads and cell phones? And she realized, no, not at all. And it was thousands of dollars every month. And
Oh
so
yeah.
it's those things. It's decisions that can be made, maybe incorrectly because we're not looking at the financials. It can be trends, and then the behaviors. A lot of time, as we know, labor. We're just like, oh, we've got everybody needs all these hours, or we need an extra staff member, but they're not looking at it right from a
You,
what does that mean to your bottom line?
you bring up a great point with labor because in Canada, like you can be out east in Newfoundland and get somebody in the same position for $23 an
Mm,
hour, and you
right,
get to some place like Fort Mac or BC and you have to pay them 50. You know what I
right.
mean? So like
Yeah,
there's this
great point.
big gap
Yeah.
of that's just numbers, but it just depends on where you're at in the country, right?
Hmm.
It's such a stat that you really gotta pay close attention to for sure. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I think they really can show us sometimes of what's happening, but also is that the root issue of what's going on?
Mhm.
So it gives us that that clue to what's happening, but we've got to really dig deeper to understand that story and so on. And we talk a lot about how leading and lagging indicators and financials typically are lagging indicators. It's already
Mhm.
happened.
Yeah.
And so, can you talk a little bit more about that? Is really how you dig in with the financials with these franchisees,
Yeah.
and what it helps you do with them?
Yeah, I think the biggest part there is setting a plan. I mean, if you
Mhm.
don't have a 3-year plan, then that's a difficult thing if you don't know where you want to go, you
Right.
know. So we're I'm always looking at opportunities to say, hey, like you want to grow, okay, how are we going to get there?
Yeah.
And then build and bring our supporting cast team as well. We have a business development team, we have marketing, we have salespeople. So like there's and like get everybody involved in the franchise system to be able to help that office. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's an important piece to it all, and really, that's like basic, you know, that's the support system that we need to surround all franchises with, not just Paul Davis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like there's, I guess that's the big thing is setting the plan, and then as you say, build a story around that 3 years, and
Right.
those projections you make with your financials. Then it's about accountability, right?
Yes.
And so that's the big piece that where us as the coach comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and you set those milestones within that 3-year plan, and you hold them accountable to it. Like I have one office I'm working with now, and they a newer office, and they started to realize, oh my God, I wasn't following my 3-year plan that I did when I first started. So
Mm-hmm.
now what? I'm like, okay, well, let's sit back down, hash this out, have our monthly touch points, making sure that they're, where you at, and again, go back to the previous year. You can't go over the last couple months because of the seasonality and everything. So you look back at the previous year rather than the previous month, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
you build that plan out on a percentage basis out over that 3-year plan. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
and it just allows you to kind of look at it and see if you're heading that in the right direction, and if there are issues, then okay, let's revisit that, and how do you think we should get there, like those are
Yeah.
the questions. And then eventually they'll say, well, what do you think? It's like, well, are you open for suggestions?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
so, right? So those are that's where you want to get to is the that trust factor. And some offices, some franchisees are all in working with us, and some aren't, and that's just the way this franchise system works, right? Everybody's franchise. Like, I'm sure you went through it too, like where you
Oh,
had the
yeah.
support system, but you're like, good, I got it, right? So,
Yep.
but it's all what you want to get out of it. So,
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And we've got, our financials can tell that story of where is that franchisee at? Are
hmm
they really engaged with the business? Are they all in, to your point? Or are they not? And are they being proactive, or are they being just reactive? The team. How is their team? Are they efficient? Are they well trained? Like, there's so much, I think financials can really tell us with seeing it on paper. And then exactly what you said at the top of this podcast is asking those questions for your understanding, really, so that, because we got to get to the root of what's going on. On one hand, it's the financial aspect and the decision making, but on the other hand, it's the human side as well. Are these guys, I don't know about you, but in my later years of being a franchisee, after having, my second brand, I was a little over it, and I
yeah,
was like, okay, what am I going to do next? And my numbers showed, because I was not driving the business anymore until I was like, okay, I'm ready to sell this business. I better get my
mhm,
acting gear and get back on track so I could have my first 5 year numbers. Because
right,
that 7 year itch or whatever it might be, it can be a real thing. So I think really looking at your financials, asking those questions to really figure out, is there a human element here? And if it is, then what do we have to do with it? So can we talk about that a little bit, and how, um, talking about, rather than just going in and saying, okay, I've seen this in your financials, labor percentage, seen this in your labor percentage, you're spending way too much on labor. You need to get that down, right? Like, and us
mhm,
telling them, because us franchisees love to be told what to do, right? How do you approach that if you use like labor percentage in maybe the questions instead of the telling? What would be, and I know I'm
yeah, for
going
sure.
off a little bit on a tangent here, but what could you be asking them?
No, and the old me would just say, hey, you're my consultant side would be like, this is
Yeah,
too high, you have to fix that.
yeah,
But in this system, it's like, I'm just comparing your office to a similar size office, and the comparables show that this is at this number. Do you think that you could get to that number, or is there a reason why this is higher? Or like ask the questions, and then once
mhm,
they see that same office of the same size and years and all that, like the comparable side of things, they can say, oh, maybe that's an issue. Isn't that an issue? It's like, then I find that's what happens. They're like, is that an issue? And like, well, what do you think? Like, and just keep
right.
throwing the question back at them.
Love
They're
that.
like, okay, well, I have to look into that. Can I get back to you on that? Like, yeah, no problem. Like, how about
Hmm.
next week we can set up something and whatever else, and we can revisit that. So
Hmm.
it's it's really just opening their eyes, and like it's no fault of their own. And a lot of these businesses and franchises, I find, in franchise in our side, is there are a lot of people work on in the business, not on the
Right,
business.
right.
So some people bought themselves a job, and
Yep.
that's fine. Like if but you have to be open to the coaching side on our side, right? And being like, hey, we can help you get there, and you can
Hmm.
still do that, but you might need a GM, you might need somebody that's going to take on the business itself. If you want to be on the tools and you want to be doing all that, that's great. But I think there's that coaching side of it too. Is like, how do you get there? And like, but
Hmm.
if they don't, sometimes you know things can happen. The capacity isn't there sometimes either, where they're like, I just don't understand this. I give up.
Right.
Okay, who am I going to talk to within your business to help you with that?
Yeah.
You know, those are the questions. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
love what you just said, because I think a lot of coaches don't go that route. Don't go as a business owner, and you can attest to this too. As a business owner, yeah, sometimes we've got to do what we don't want to do in our businesses. It's just the reality of business ownership. But
Mhm,
sometimes we also have a choice.
mhm,
And we want to be enjoying what we're doing. You know, we didn't buy a business to be tortured. We want to do what we're doing. And if your guys loved, you know, working the tools and getting out there, and then the question is not, no, you can't do that. You're the business owner. The question is, okay, what are we going to do about this side of the business? What are a manager, a general manager, what, because this has to get done. If it's not going to be you, who's it going to be? You know, for me, my last business, it sounds silly, but I wanted to do my bookkeeping. I just loved my bookkeeping. It kept me in the numbers. Maybe it's I like money and I like to see money, but I kept that as part of my role, and other things that maybe another franchisee would be doing, I got somebody else to do, and it worked really well. And I enjoyed it. And that's what it's all about. We need to get to a place where we can enjoy running this business, doing what we want to do, but also not to the detriment of driving the business to the ground or making poor decisions. But it is feasible out there. So I love that you look at that side of things as well. So, okay, I want to shift a little bit, because you've made reference a couple of times to our accelerator program, and you know, learning. You used to be a consultant, now you're asking a lot more questions. So for those listeners, our accelerator program, that's kind of our name for our field coach certification. And Damian, you are a graduate of our field coach certification, so you are AC Inc. field coach certified. So congratulations on that. So I want to start before we're going to talk about what that did for you and how it helped you level up your coaching and you know, coaching in general, and then from a financial standpoint. I want to ask you, because I don't know if I've asked anybody this, why did you take the program in the first place?
Well, to be honest, like I had 20 years of experience in business, so I was like, and coaching and consulting. So I was like, you know, is this really? Do I really need this? You know, my boss, he said, you know, there's this course that we're kind of looking into. Would you be interested in taking it to kind of let us know what it's about and that type of thing? And so I was like, you know, I'll give it a shot, you know.
Yeah. But you're skeptical.
And I went in with a, you know, kind of a, not a, sorry, my dog's I went in with like not a very optimistic, you know, thought process. So it was kind of like exploratory. But I'll tell you, like in the first day, I was like, oh, okay, I'm a consultant. The way I'm talking, I'm not a coach, and that was the aha moment where I was like, I looked internally, and after that first session with Erica, and she's amazing, by the way. I'm a big fan of her. She helped me through a lot. And I said, I need to be a coach to be in this franchise world. Like I cannot be a consultant. And I realized that in the first session. And it really changed my perspective on how I approached all the owners after that. And I know some of the owners actually recognized it. They're like, wow, you're different. Why are you acting differently? You know, like, and I was like, because I was implementing everything I was learning, I was able to implement it that day, you know? Nice. So that's what I really loved about it. I was like, oh my God. Like, so when I first, again, you know, I have to be convinced of things a lot of times. So, but this was the aha moment, like right away. I knew it right away, and just the way Erica approached it, and how your training system works, and you know, it was very helpful. I mean, for me, that I know, not an old dog, but it's somebody that had so much experience in the past. Figured it wouldn't help. It definitely did. It instantly. So.
If you can reflect back, what were some of the other, I mean, we know moving from consulting to coaching, but can you think of anything else, any of those kind of skills that really helped you level up?
Oh yeah, it was the questions. Like, it was asking the questions, and I relate back to that quite a bit. And it was always like, I actually go back to my notes and saying, what if this was the situation? Because I made a bunch of notes as I was going through, because a lot of the stuff happens again and again. Like, some of it's repetitive. So I was like, what kind of question can I ask here? And I haven't used that resource yet, but I could probably, Erica always said, shoot me a message if you ever have anything to bounce ideas off us. And that was actually the benefit too, is like we had a group of coaches in one room where I was like, if a major instance came up, I was like, guys, I'm off today. This is what's happening. I need your help. And it was like
Nice.
real time information flowing through, and just helping with, like, helping me get through that, and just the support around it all. It was awesome. Yeah.
Nice. I'm so glad to hear it. And we love to say that, we interview or survey everyone that comes out of that program, and the feedback is always stellar. I love hearing it. I've been doing it for 20 years. I've been doing it for 30 years, and it still helped level me up and my skills and make me a better coach. And that's what it's all about. Right? Is us showing up for our franchisees and just helping them reach their goals. That's
Yeah.
really what our jobs are as coaches.
Right.
It's helping these franchisees reach their goals.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. That was great. Thank you. And so if we circle that back into the financial side of things, what have you really put to use? Maybe real specifics. I don't know if you want to say specific questions or specific approaches that you've kind of learned over here and that you've been putting to your financial conversations.
Yeah. So it's funny. I'm not an accountant,
Yeah.
so that's the big thing. So allowing the franchisees to know my vulnerabilities as well, and just saying, like, I I'm not going to be the guy that's going to go to CRA and get all your stuff paid for, but and just understanding, like, being open with them, and then it seems like that trust factor comes. And once I built that trust, that's something I learned. I need to build that trust factor first.
Hmm.
Then we got into numbers, because
Right.
numbers are a scary, scary thing for people. It's personal. It's so personal, because it's like, are you criticizing the way I spend my money? Like,
Right.
who are you, like this, right?
Hmm.
So I really found that I was able to get in based on the coaching I was given through this program, and be able
Hmm.
to, use the numbers to and ask in a more of a constructive way, rather than a consulting way, as I've done in the past, right? So
Hmm.
um, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
Hmm.
that's kind of where my head was at when you asked it. So
Yeah. No, I trust. You don't have anything if you don't have trust with your franchisees, right?
hmm
You've got nothing,
yeah,
because it's all about the trust, the rapport, the relationship. If you
hmm
want your franchisees, and it's not about, I want my franchisees to listen to me.
yeah,
That's not what it's about. It's about having your franchisees trust you to have conversations with you,
hmm
and to help to answer the questions you're asking, and to be open and start having that growth mindset, and really trying to consider the things that you've drawn out of them. And
hmm
then when it comes time to, there's times that we just need to give guidance, right? Consulting is actually a piece of coaching. It
it
really
is.
is. There are
Yep.
times that we have to say to a franchisee, okay, this is what you need to do. Now, it's about the approach and how you say it in the situation, because you will have some franchisees that are like, I value your opinion. You know what's going on. You talk to all these other franchisees. Tell me what to do. It's all about the how the franchisee is going to take what you're saying, and in that scenario, and sometimes we just have to say, here's the right move.
Yeah.
But it's about, are they going to be receptive to that, and are they asking for that, and that kind of thing. So,
Right.
you know um so if we talk about from a coach, and getting back to financials, your advice, if you can kind of give me a list of some of your top things, how can you, as a coach working with franchisees on financials, how can you either build that franchisee's confidence in the financials, or the coach's approach to using and empowering the franchisees to be using the financials? So what are kind of your best practices on that, even if you've said them before? We're wrapping
Yeah.
up, so
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. No, again, it comes down to the main points I mentioned before: your top line revenue, your cost of goods sold, your gross profit margins, expenses, cash flow, AR, and AP. Like,
Mhm.
and just getting them to just focus on those numbers. And if you see something that's a little out of whack, that's where you dive into those, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to get down to the specifics all the time. You do high level, keep it very simple, stupid. Keep the KISS method, like
Simple.
it's,
Simple and
just so,
practical. Yep.
yes, exactly, right? Like, and just keep it as high level as possible and don't complicate it for them, and
Hmm.
just say, hey, like, look at these numbers every week, even, see where you're at weekly, and then do that over monthly, and project on where you're going to be, and eventually they do gain that confidence. So it's
Yeah.
trying to coach them through to get to that confident piece where, then they're having that conversation back with you. Hey, I looked at my cost of goods sold, and it's looking better this month. I'm like, great, that's perfect.
Hmm.
Like, good job on you. And, like, and pumping them up too, like saying good job, and be that coach, right? So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, so it's always, and it could be such a lonely place being an entrepreneur, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're just in your own little island, and you can't tell your employees if you're going to go, under, or if you're not doing as good as you want to, because you don't want them to feel bad, or you can't tell your wife sometimes because you don't want them to be worried and your home
Right.
left to be in
Yeah.
shambles. So it's like, who do I talk to? And that's the goal as the coach, is to have that confidence that they can say, hey, this is where I'm at. Do you see the same thing, or whatever, right? So,
Hmm. Hmm.
so
No, for
yeah.
sure. I'll just add a couple pieces because I know how heavy financials are in, restoration franchise system. There's other brands where financials are always important, but things don't shift so much over long periods of time. So some brands definitely are looking at financials every month. That's part of every coaching call might be
Mhm.
financials. There's other brands that aren't, because maybe it's a simpler model. Maybe there's only a few KPIs and they're looking at those on a scorecard or whatever it might be. But my advice to people out there is you have a process to looking at financials, to using financials, whatever that process is that's right for your concept and your brand. Whether it's this is what we do on our monthly coaching call, whether it's we do this every quarter and we do a deep dive for quarter. I would say you don't want to just be doing this on a on a yearly basis, because then it's too late. But certainly, and build that consistency in, build that focus on the franchisee's comfort level with that, and then be consistent. Use the simple language, and extract a couple of those KPIs from the financials. If you're looking at P&Ls or whatever it might be, extract some of those into your regular scorecard. If you're using a scorecard that maybe the franchisee is looking at weekly, or you guys are looking at monthly, so that we're actually, because when you put it into a scorecard, we really develop an action plan around it. If it's in a scorecard, it means we're actioning it. Means we're actively working to reduce our labor costs, or we're actively working to maybe it's even top line sales, or whatever those pieces are, is that we're developing action plans to target those few things. We can't put everything on our scorecard. And so we have so many fixed costs that don't necessarily need to be looked at that often. So those are just a couple of pieces of advice from me, and helping build those habits and empower our franchisee. Just like you said, you had that guy who said, "Hey, I've been looking at I can't remember if it was
Cost of goods sold. Yeah.
goods. Yeah, I've been looking at that regularly." Like that's what we want to do. It's all about the
Mhm.
empowering the franchisees to do things like that. So, okay, well, I'm looking at the time. Damian, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on to the podcast, and telling us about, financials, and how you coach franchisees, and then your experience with our field coach certification. It was great to talk to you. I hope you'll come on again. And so everybody listening, please, I hope you learned some little nuggets out there. That's what this is all about. You know, you listen to these podcasts and you may be like, oh, I know that, I do that. But every so often there's a little good nugget of, I'm going to take that, I'm going to go use that. So we're hoping that you got some of those little nuggets. So if you are interested in learning more about AC Inc. and what we do, our field coach certification called the Accelerator Program, anything like that, just reach out. I can be reached at jennifer@fieldcoachexperts.com, and I'm always happy to have a conversation. So thanks for joining us on the Field Coach Expert podcast, and I will see you next week.